Ms. Van Hoy, good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
We can start. I'm looking for Mr. Steele.
I'm going to stop the music on YouTube. Please remember, everybody, that you are live on YouTube. There is a 30-second delay, but it is live. Dr. Adams, I'm not recording this.
That's correct.
Thank you. Let me know if you need anything.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for giving me an opportunity to have a conversation with you. I'll start with giving it to Dr. Steele, Mr. Steele, to kind of set the tone, I guess, or the opening for the meeting, and then we can kind of go from there. Mr. Steele, I'm going to leave it up to you. Kind of start, then I'll jump in after
you. Thank you, Dr. Adams. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. For some of you, it's been a while since we've seen each other, even on Zoom. Thanks for joining us. Just a reminder, this is a group of parents that are active or future PTO committee members or officers. And Dr. Adams asked to meet with a group of folks, and then so he could live stream the meeting so other parents could view. And so I really appreciate your time this evening to join us as an opportunity to have a conversation, ask some questions, express some things, and then hopefully be content with where we leave it.
So as Dr. Steele said, I'll start by, first of all, thanking you very much on such short notice to come together to have a conversation. My intent is to talk about 5 to 10 minutes, if that much, and then to kind of take any kind of questions that you might have. First, as I did with the faculty on, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, I want to thank you because I know this has been a very difficult year for you, for kids, for the audience, for everybody, quite frankly, as we struggle through this pandemic to try to educate kids and support them as much as we could in light of what's happening in our country and what's happening relatively locally as well. So I'll start by saying that, first of all, while I know that this comes across as not a real positive story, it is a positive story because we're talking about the expansion of CSMB. The school has done very well, and it's really not about a building, but about a program. Mr. Steele has indicated he's accepting about 20 additional students this year compared to last year, and likely will be doing the same thing for the next couple of years. After that point in time, the school kind of maxes out. Quite frankly, I think it maxes out next year because the capacity of the building doesn't accommodate much more than about 320, 350 kids. And there is an appetite for more kids to come to this particular school. So when we started this trek several years ago, the building was at De Pere, just to give some people some history. And we were there 1 or 2 years, if my memory is correct. And then we looked for another location to go 2 years. We moved to Wyman, although at that point in time, we were looking at Louverture School, but Wyman was the selection. The district poured anywhere from $5 to $6 million into the building to renovate it, to get it up to speed. We knew at that time that it was an elementary school and it wouldn't have all of the facility need things that a high school would need. So the advisory board, which has been incredibly important to this particular school, bringing an outside voice to the school, had the idea that they would be able to raise some funds to support the further expansion of the school. Over that period of time, over the last 5 or 6 years, they have created 2 sets of plans to do that. But quite frankly, the market over the last 2 or 3 years has indicated that they would not be able to raise the kind of dollars that they thought they would be able to try to create the kind of environment for a gym and elevator and a wing that would take the place of the portables. We knew when we purchased the portables or rented the portables, quite frankly, and we spent about $70,000 to $80,000 a year for the portables, that they would not last forever. So we have quite frankly, a life of maybe a couple more years with the portables. Mr. Steele was able to, from the plant center, get a piece of equipment that's going to be used in the lab, and the intent was to place them in a portable, but the foundational portable doesn't support that, and so it had to be moved inside of the building last week. And so that speaks to the fragility of the portables and um, um, the belief that we have to do something different because in 2 years we'll be back at this place. We can't have portables at the building forever, and the size of the building doesn't accommodate everything. And the notion of the fact that there's not an elevator. Many of you who were there a couple of years ago knew about the issue with the elevator and the kind of feedback that we got relative to it. So probably about a couple of years ago, we started looking at the idea of another location, knowing that the advisory board was indicating that they were not going to be able to garner the kind of dollars that they talked about. And so we did not want to do anything until we had a conversation around school closures because we thought maybe one of the buildings that might close could possibly accommodate CSMB. Once we started having this conversation around school closures, the advisory board and myself over the last, I want to say 60 days, visited a couple of buildings that we thought might be able to accommodate the school. None of those buildings were adequate enough to do so. And so when a decision was made relative to Cleveland, since Cleveland already houses a high school, we thought that this would be a good location. And so we looked at the location, looked at what needed to be done to accommodate the possibility of moving CSMB in that particular building with the facilities that are already high school facilities, gym, auditorium, soccer field, a large cafeteria. It also cohabitates right now with Central, and there have not been any outstanding issues at all over the last, I want to say 6 or 7 years since that has occurred. But Bush Elementary School was in the building before that point in time, and there were not any outstanding issues there as well. We also know that this school needs labs. It already has one present lab. We're looking to move 2 other labs, one from Northwest and one from Northwest and one from Beaumont, likely 2 from Beaumont, to give the number of 4 labs that the school needs. And I provided Mr. Steele some pictures of what those labs look like right now in those 2 locations. And so we look closely at the idea of the school moving. The timing may seem a little bit more problematic for everybody, as I know that we're in the middle of a pandemic and all of those kinds of things. But quite frankly, it's probably much more an ideal time in that kids have not been in the building called Wyman for the most part all year long. And obviously juniors and seniors are leaving. Seniors, but juniors have been there for the last 2 years. And so the notion of being in that building obviously means probably a little bit more to them than it does to everybody else. And I can understand their concerns. And I've looked at the petitions that have been forwarded to me to the degree that I can as of earlier today. So the idea, quite frankly, is to look to move the school to Cleveland, to do the necessary renovations that need to take place with science labs. Central does not have any sports program. So the sports equipment or the sports facility 100% support CSMB. We did a survey about 4 or 5 weeks ago to kind of get some idea of what families were thinking or might be thinking. It's about 3.2 miles from Cleveland. I'm sorry, from CSMB right now, from Cleveland. And so we have done a lot of work to kind of look at this. The challenge is this the right time to do so? I think the answer to the question is yes, because buildings deteriorate over time if nobody's in them. And so will we be able to do it and get it ready for the time school starts? The answer is 100% yes. I met with my team today just to make sure that I got a yes to all of the answers to the question. And it does. There's several questions that have come forward, so I'll try to address those. Will we be able to stay at an 8 o'clock time? After talking to my transportation persons earlier today, the answer is yes. The likelihood of both schools going to 8 o'clock, that was a concern that Mr. Steele raised on Saturday, so I went back to do some research around that. Will there be 4 science labs? The answer is yes. The intent is that will be 4 science labs. Will you get an opportunity to look at the building? The building is presently occupied. It is not our normal practice to let somebody come look at the building. It does need some renovation. Let me be clear about that. But I feel 100% confident that the building will be prepared and ready. Wyman was was built in 1901. This building was built in 1936, so all of our buildings are old buildings. Will it be renovated adequate enough to support the kids at CSMB? 100% yes. If you saw Wyman before we moved the kids in that building, you would want to have a fit. I mean, it was really in deplorable condition, and we had to get it up to speed. And the team in the district has been able to do that every single time that we have had to do this in the past, whether it was moving into Pear for the first time or moving into Wyman for the first time. That is not something that I'm concerned about at all. I believe over the next 2 months, if this happens in June and July, we will be able to do what we need to do after looking at it with the team on Saturday again and after me talking to my team today. I realize that this comes with some degree of consternation because moving is very difficult. No matter what happens, no matter when the time is, it's very difficult. So I kind of want to lay out all of these things. I'm meeting with you as an executive board to listen to your concerns, to talk to you and answer any kind of questions you might have. I feel confident, or else I wouldn't even make the recommendation if I didn't think it would be a building that you would feel satisfied with when we get to August. Would you be satisfied with it today? The answer is no, because the science labs are not there. Some painting and renovation needs to be done. I've asked the board to approve of $1 million for painting across the entire district. And so obviously Cleveland's going to be repainted entirely. And I've asked the board for another $1 million for furniture. So CSMB, quite frankly, doesn't need any furniture, but this is across the district that will be providing furniture and buildings, obviously because of the social distancing piece and trying to address the 6 feet or 3 feet, depending upon what the CDC says. So that's kind of where we are right now. I kind of want to lay out everything. I did the same thing with the faculty last week to try to address their questions and concerns. And so I will shut up at this point in time and take any kind of questions, any and all questions that you might have relative to this particular move, with the idea that the same kind of questions that you are proffering to me, the audience, meaning the student body, and any other parent can listen in on. And we can also provide, although we're not taping this because I didn't get your permission to tape it, to tape you, I did want to give an opportunity for people to hear and then hopefully describe some of this and get out to everybody who wants to get it. So at this time, Dr. Steele, Mrs. Steele, I'll shut up and allow you to kind of call on any parent you want to who wants to raise their hand or just talk.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Appreciate it a lot. I would encourage folks just to unmute themselves and ask a question.
Dr. Adams, my name is Pat. Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this. Can you give me a sense of why the rush for next year when it seems to me that the numbers would support for one more year, being at Collegiate? And in that time, then a community of stakeholders, students who have not had the chance to speak with you about it or for their voices to be heard in a forum such as this, teachers who I think just had the meeting with you, which sounded great, but maybe haven't had time really to think about it and talk to each other outside of the context you provided, and then parents and community members who have supported the school in the past. Is there a hidden push for why you feel like this needs to happen in 4 months, 5 months, in terms of instead of say 17, 18 months?
Excellent question, one that I am sure other persons have as well. As I said before, buildings that are not occupied tend to deteriorate really fast. We plan on trying to get the building ready this summer, and I would hate to have the building ready and then have it vandalized. Is one of my big concerns, quite frankly. And quite frankly, the district has other needs as well. And so it may be possible that, because we've talked about the possibility of another entity moving into the school as well. And so if there's no interest from this community about doing this, then the district has other needs as well that this facility could accommodate. And so I just want to, and this is not, I want to be careful, this is not a threat in any way, shape, or form, but this is us looking at all of the options. And I don't know that the student body, to your point, in the community will be ready for any kind of move next year as opposed to this year. I think the biggest challenge is getting the building ready. That's number one. And obviously the notion of bringing up everybody up to speed to feel much more comfortable about it is obviously, a close second. But, for me, it's about trying to get the building open and ready with the science labs and all of those other kinds of things. We are closing Northwest, as has already been approved. And so I don't know that the kind of vandalism that might take place at Northwest, what keeps me from bringing the labs over there sooner than later, is a concern for me, frankly and honestly, just to be totally transparent with you. I'm just concerned about what might happen in this 18-month period as opposed to four-month period. When we've done this in the past, this has been around the same time. We normally don't start working on buildings until the summer when we close one and go into the other one. Wyman was a little bit different because it was unoccupied. And I don't know how long it took us to do Wyman, but it was not occupied at all. And that's why we had a little bit more time to do that. But the kind of work that we're talking about doing in Cleveland is not super overwhelming. It's the moving of the labs, it's some renovations around the bathroom, it's around repainting, and obviously moving all the material in. So that would be my rationale, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett. That would be the only rationale.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please answer any question you have, please. This is as much for you as it is for the persons who listen.
Dr. Adams, I have a question, and first I would just acknowledge the difficulty of this year for you and your team as well. While it certainly has been difficult for parents, I know it's been maybe more difficult for those trying to make all these decisions during the pandemic. So appreciate you hanging in there. My question is more about communication. So as you were talking a few minutes ago, it sounded like even a couple of years ago, there was a sense that Collegiate would need to find a new home at some point. And then as schools were being closed, there wasn't really any mention of schools moving to fill in those buildings. And so I wonder if for us as parents, there's a little bit of shock and feeling like this is coming out of the blue, when in fact it has been talked about at some level for a while. I guess my question is that accurate? And second question is, if so, why not share that with us as it was unfolding so we could be a little more prepared now, or at least a little more not caught off guard?
That's an excellent question again. It is my understanding that Dr. Steele, Mr. Steele, there was one representative from the executive board that has been part of the advisory committee. And it was, I thought my understanding that some information, not all of it, was going to parents, at least to that member who was on the advisory board that was also part of the executive board. I found out that was not necessarily the case in every single case. The other piece is the fact that the school has been really popular. I don't think anybody thought it would grow this fast, or that there will be a desire for kids to come to the school so fast. And so I think everybody thought we had a little bit more time. But I think it was always the impression, even from the advisory board, that the school wasn't going to be adequate enough without some renovation or without some movement. And I don't know the movement part was ever discussed as much as it's being discussed now. So I think there's always been, and Mr. Steele can kind of clarify that there's always been talk around the renovation of the school, adding a larger gym, getting rid of the science labs. It was never the intent that these science labs would be there forever, ever. To be honest with you, we thought this would be a 3 to 4 year piece. But the fact that we're in year 6 is a little surprising to me, because we always thought that dollars would be able to be raised. The district committed that they would not be able to raise any more dollars to do anything in this building, not to the degree that needed to be done. Some of the little things that we are doing, yes, we could do that, but it was never the intent to put $20 million to add another wing to the building or add another gym. That was never, ever intent. The district has a ton of different needs, and it was never the intent to do that. And so the district was depending upon philanthropic dollars to support that. But as you know, the economy changed, the pandemic happened. There was a lawsuit that occurred between district and charters, and some of the benefactors that support the district had some real concerns about their ability to raise dollars in that kind of way. So it kind of went away slowly. There was still some belief that we could get there, and we believe we could get there. Probably over the last 12 to 18 months, it was a real realization that we're not going to be able to raise that kind of money. And so that's when I started having some conversation with the advisory board to say, look, you know, we can't do this forever. I can't keep this school like this forever. The portables are not going to be forever. We have to think about something differently. And we started thinking about schools. And I said to them, let's wait until we get past the school closing piece first. Let's not do this and wrap this in the school closing piece. That's two separate, different conversations. As you know, there was a lot of acrimony around that, and I didn't want to wrap CSMB into it because people would be saying we were closing the school so CSMB could be in the building, and that would be this whole issue around equity and all of that kind of stuff. So I wanted to stay away from that conversation. And so I wanted to wait until we actually closed schools and then look at the notion of what might happen as a result of this. And frankly, Cleveland was not really a big option. And so we started looking at other choices and said, okay, Cleveland might be the best choice right now in light of how, because the survey told us people want to stay in South St. Louis. There was a real desire to stay south as opposed to north. The two schools we were looking at before were in North St. Louis. And if you know anything about St. Louis and the history of St. Louis, the whole issue of the Delmar Divide always raises a whole bunch of issues. So once the survey information came back, it gave us a little bit more guidance around what we might need to be looking at, because I think the priority wasn't really so much South St. Louis, but it was trying to stay closer to a medical facility. And the medical facilities, as you know, are in South St. Louis. And so that's the reason why. And again, I apologize. Would have had some conversation earlier, but I was trying to be very careful around the nuance of closing schools and moving schools and all of those things. And the last piece, quite frankly, is the building that's right in front of CSMB is called Napa, which is a school that we have for our ESOL students coming from other countries. We've gotten some information that the fall of this year will likely cause a large uptick in families that will be coming to the United States in light of what's happening right now in the country of young people coming unaccompanied. And so while through the previous administration there was a decline in that, it seems that the intel we've gotten just most recently, quite frankly, this wasn't part of the initial conversation when I thought about this 3 months ago or 2 months ago, that there may be an uptick in the population in that facility. So it is likely that after CSMB moves out, or if CSMB moves out, depending on what the board says, that facility will be used for our ESOL families as the numbers look like they're going to uptick from grades K through 8. Not so much at high school, because the high school can go to Roosevelt, where we have more than enough room, but it is likely that the Wyman building may be needed for that if the intel we're getting right now is consistent with what the officials are telling us. That's a long way of trying to answer your question, and I'm sorry I took so long.
I appreciate all the extra added context. I think it's always hard, right? We're parents at Collegiate. And so when something happens at Collegiate, we are either excited or we're not excited, or we're somewhere in between. And it can be easy not to know what that bigger context is throughout the whole school system. And that's the difficulty of your job, obviously, to try and balance all those different needs that we don't have any visibility to at times. So I appreciate the extra information.
Thank you.
So there are quite a few questions that are on the Facebook page, the PTO Facebook page. So I just want to ask some of those questions on behalf
Sure.
of the parents that
Sure.
are able to.
Sure.
I'm just
Yes, ma'am.
reading straight off of my phone here.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so one of the questions is, how will current partnerships with institutions be affected? Or will they be affected, I guess?
Not affected at all. Zero.
Okay. Another question is, what spaces exactly will be shared between Collegiate and Central?
Excellent question. Cafeteria, gym, when it's PE time, not for sports because they don't have a sports program, and auditorium.
Okay, another one of the questions is, will buses be shared?
Highly likely, yes. I would say likely, yes. I think they
Okay,
have 10, I think they have 10 buses and y'all have 8 buses or vice versa.
okay. Another question is, who handles discipline problems if kids from both schools are involved?
Both administrators. But
Okay.
I want to be careful with this one. And I went back and I talked to both of the principals. They have not had any incidents in 6 years. The only challenge they have there, quite frankly, is that Central has more girls than boys and Cleveland has more boys than girls. And so the relationship piece in terms of that is the only thing. But they've not had any issues. The buildings, quite frankly, are totally separated. Cleveland's colors are blue and all of the floors that Cleveland uses are blue and all of Central's building floors and floors are white. And so it's totally different, 100%. We saw that this Saturday, as Mr. Steele did. So there have not been any major issues at all that I know of and that the principals articulated. And Dr. Steele met with the principal and their administrative team last Wednesday, Thursday to talk through any kind of concerns, and there were none.
Okay, okay, awesome. I have another, and again, these are just questions
Yes,
from the parents.
please, all of them, good, bad, and indifferent, please give them to me.
Okay, and so Dion, I know that you were supposed to be going over the questions. Did you want to continue or should I?
You can continue. I just had a concern when Dr. Adams said that there would be no disruption of programming. I don't know how true that is from maybe just because of what he knows of the school, but a lot of the students, the medical school students from SLU, walk over to give kids after school tutoring. And there's a program that I think HOSA, and I forgot what the other tutoring program was called, but medical school students, the proximity for them was actually really good, in that they could just walk from the campus across the street, or some, and I know that they were volunteers, so I don't know if Dr. Adams knew about that, but
Did
what will happen to that support? Because I think a lot of the concern that the parents have is that the children won't have the same type of support. It's a culture and not just the 8 to 2 or 8 to 3 programming. It's the things that happen after school. And I know we haven't had to address them this school year because there was no school. But there are programs that medical school students, they get their practicum hours to help our students, and then our students learn from them.
So, Mr. Steele, you might want to address that because yeah, thank you, Ms. Starling. I am not familiar with that. So that's a really excellent question.
No, Ms. Stalling, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'll confirm that of your concern. There are medical school students, they're called Doctors for Diversity at St. Louis University, that have been volunteering at Collegiate, providing mentoring and tutoring support after school for, until the pandemic started. There's the Young Scientist Program, YSP, with Washington University medical school students who have been coming basically the entire existence of Collegiate, 7 to 8 years. And so I don't really anticipate disruption when we move to a different building. They will be able to drive to our campus. It's about 5 or 6 minutes away from St. Louis University School of Medicine and about equal distant from Wash U School of Medicine. It'll be less convenient because they can't just necessarily walk. That's true. But I don't expect a decline in either program whatsoever once the pandemic lifts a little bit, so we can do a lot more. There has been a little bit of virtual contact, through Zoom meetings. Not the same structure or scheduling as before, but there has been some maintained contact.
But to Mrs. Stallings' point, I think it's worth finding out earlier than later what the move might mean to them participating. And we and Dr. Steele can get back with you. I know Dr. Ross is on the advisory board, and I know the president of SLU is on the advisory board as well. So we can check those two parties to see what they think about what this move might mean for that, because we have not checked. So that is an excellent point.
Dr. Steele or Mr. Steele, it's possible that St. Louis University has a number of student shuttle vans that they use for all kinds of St. Louis U student activities. If they're coming over as a group, it's pretty likely that they would be able to use a van and to get to a new location and back if that's available.
I would agree. That's true. They run right near our school building already and may have used that in the past to come and go from our school. I would expect that to remain.
And there was some other questions. I didn't know if Ms. Smith had scrolled down. I was looking like she was. But one of the parents wants to know, is the school district going to make accommodations to families who want to pull their student out because they feel like the decision is abrupt and we weren't a part of it?
We will do everything in our power to accommodate any family who wants to transfer. Yes, is the answer. I would hope that that's not the case, but I do understand parents have a choice. And this may come as a little shock to some families, but yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. And one parent wants to know, will they be able to, since a tour is not possible, would the school district be able to provide photos of the facility as a reassurance of what the learning area would be? And also I would like to add, if you take the pictures now, of course, that won't show the renovations, or
Right.
could you show
Right.
what
Right.
is possible or what everything
Yes.
may look like? But she wants to know if
Yeah.
photos be provided.
I would say earlier than, I would say not until June or July. What I can do is show you what the labs are going to look like, which I think is the easiest thing to do, which I provided to Mr. Steele. The rest of it is going to look like a different building in terms of the inside, the color. Cleveland's colors were blue, royal blue, and so they have painted the building mainly blue. There's signage that says Cleveland ROTC. There's a sign in the middle of the big hall that they use that says Cleveland ROTC. Everything is ROTC. There's a room that can be a band room right now that's being used right now for their artillery, where they do shooting and stuff. And so there's a lot that it has to change inside the building that we looked at. But as I said to the advisory group, CSMB has to put their own stamp on the building, just like they did on the Weidman building. It was an empty building. They have to put their own stamp on the building because the building right now says everything Cleveland ROTC. Everything is a military school. In every way, shape, or form. It looks like a military school. So taking pictures of it right now will give you an impression it looks like a military school. But the renovations are going to allow you to do what you need to do in terms of the building. The intent right now, and this is not public, but I'm making this announcement tomorrow. I'll be asking the board to approve closing school on the last day in May, as opposed to that Friday in June. We have several moves to make, and so staff will be assisting in terms of packing up and that kind of stuff. Plus, the staff at CSMB will be allowed to come back early to try to set up and get ready. We believe the building will be ready by the first week in August to give everybody an opportunity to come in, so the CSMB staff could put their stamp on the building. Obviously, they'll be paid to do that and get the building, to your point, installing much more like a CSMB building as opposed to a Cleveland building. And that's going to take some nuancing to do. So we are leaning into supporting whatever needs to be done to allow staff, and I said this to them as well, to come and get the building ready as soon as the building is ready. But I have zero doubt after talking to my team today that they'll be able to pull off getting the building ready. The biggest piece, quite frankly, are the labs, moving the labs from the 3 locations that we talked about.
Okay, and I just have 2 personal questions. I want to make sure, because when we met with you, I think year before last about the elevators, I want to make sure that this building 100% wheelchair and wheelchair accessible, and is there an elevator in the building?
There is an elevator in the building.
Okay.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
my concern is I know this may be more of a question to Mr. Steele, but will the support staff be shared between the two schools, or will we still have our own separate college coach, nurse, guidance counselor, and things like that?
100% what you have now, you're sharing nothing. You have your own nurse, they have their own nurse, their own principal, nothing is shared at all, nothing other than the facility. And I want to clarify, there's one elevator for the entire building. So there is one elevator for the building because it was configured as one building years and years and years and years ago. So there is one elevator that accommodates whoever's in the building.
That's fine. It was just that parents, and I'm disabled too, but I am able to walk. But
Yes, ma'am.
it was a big thing about parents being able to get on the second or third floor for activities. So just as long as we know that there's a working elevator.
Yes, ma'am. There is.
Hey, Dr. Adams. My name is Misha Grimes. I have a daughter at Collegiate. She's a sophomore. And so my question is, since, everyone has the concerns and we know the budget costs when it comes to seeing, to Collegiate and the move, if it comes to a point to where it's not agreed upon and we don't move to Cleveland and we stay where we currently are, what time frame or what's another option? Is it in the coming year? Will you just consider getting more portals, or what would happen then?
That's an excellent question. I would think that we would have to cap enrollment. And then if we do something else with Cleveland, then we will be coming back and having a conversation about capping enrollment. Mr. Steele would have to stop the numbers where they are now. I think he can max out at 320. In 2 or 3 years, the portables would be problematic for us, and we would have to think about more portables, I guess, if the board was willing to spend $80,000 to $100,000 a year to do that. We are repairing the roof of the gym right now, and so we would, do what we need to do to kind of keep the building moving along, and kind of cap the enrollment. They would not be able to take any more kids than what he kind of has right now. He has a request for 3 additional staff, at least 2.5 different staff. That request would not be honored, not because I don't want to honor it. That might be part of it, but the other part is he just doesn't have the facility to kind of get it done. So I don't know. That's a really good question. I thought about that a great deal. I really have. I think it kind of stops the building where it is now. I think you kind of locking where you are now. And yeah, I think it's an excellent question. I don't know that I have a really good answer other than things will stay like they are now. It may not impact the juniors and seniors there now, but it will likely affect the freshmen coming in. And your freshman class is expected to be what this year, Dr. Steele?
85 students in the freshman class for the coming year, and currently we have 85 freshmen.
Okay. And so how many did you have? So you have 85 this year and you plan on having 85? Yeah. So
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry.
mhm.
I'm coming from being a former student of Metro many years ago. I don't understand what's wrong with capping the enrollment. And if I know that there is a desire, but part of the appeal is the small classrooms. And I'm sure you'll have a certain amount that you won't go over. But I've heard, me and Mr. Steele have talked about this. I don't understand why, even though we have an advisory board and fundraising isn't this, that's fine. But Metro was not moved off of Washington until they got into their own building. So what is it about the surplus buildings that the district has that they can try to make it advantageous for the developer or someone to buy those buildings and use that money to find space or a lot of maybe 20,000 or 10,000 square feet to build a proper state-of-the-art building that's built with the latest solar equipment to be able to get it powered. That way it would save the district money, and the school and Collegiate would have its own building.
Elementary
Like
schools.
putting something on the ballot. I didn't understand why we never went to the public and said, I know you can't allocate money specifically for a school, but the district-wide, the district needs money, but also having that money to be able to build a state-of-the-art school. So you won't have to spend $1 million or 500,000 to renovate these old buildings that frankly cost money to heat and cool because they're old.
So I'll give you my 100-foot level kind of um, response. It costs about $20 million to do an elementary school, about 40 or $50 million to do a kind of state-of-the-art high school. Let's say 30 or 40 million to do a kind of state-of-the-art high school. The buildings that we have right now, we have an offer for um, several of our schools right now as a result of closing, and the most that we are looking to get is $1.5 million. So that shows you that the disparity between if we sell a building as opposed to what it takes to buy another building, or at least to build another building. You are correct. We could go out and do a bond, but as I indicated before, with 68 different buildings now, 62, I think, or 61 when we close these schools, there are a million different needs that schools have. I think we have $300 million of unfunded needs. So the priority is not to build a building when you have all of these buildings that are empty. And so there is not viewed, it isn't viewed that there's a need to build a building exclusively for one school or another school. The board would have to weigh in on that. To do that, as a matter of fact, I made a recommendation when we did have the bond passed to close some elementary schools on the south side, I think Shenandoah and another couple of schools, and build a school, and the community said no. They didn't want to build a building. They wanted the old building because the old buildings have character. Plus, because these buildings are on the historical register, we can't just tear the building down. We can't tear down any building that was built by Itner because they're historical buildings. We have to get permission to tear down any building that was built by Itner or buildings that are approved by the Historical Society. So it sounds easy, but it's really, really detailed to, number one, get a bond pass and to tear down a building and build a building. I've been here 12 years, and we've only been able to tear down one building, although we've been offered to tear down several buildings. And the only building we've been able to tear down was Hodgins, that was in front of the new Hodgins. And we got permission to do that, and it cost us $1 million to tear down that building. Not because it was the issue of tearing it down, because of the asbestos in some of these old buildings has to be remediated properly before you could tear it down, because all of these old towers are made out of asbestos. So it's really complicated to do so. Plus, I don't know that there would be energy means installing for this community to kind of build a building exclusively for CSMB. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but when all of the other needs in the community, in the city, it would be probably problematic to try to get that passed. And frankly, it would take several years, more than 1 or 2, to get that done.
Okay.
So Dr. Adams, this is Misha again. So is the primary purpose for moving Collegiate so that we can accommodate more students because we don't want to cap the enrollment?
And you don't have any athletic facilities that the school has been asking for since they moved in. Since I've been the superintendent, they've been asking. Right now, they have to go play at Cleveland, quite frankly, for their volleyball and basketball games. They don't have an auditorium. They don't have the elevator, as Ms. Stallings has indicated. They just don't. It's an elementary school that we squeezed into, turned into a high school. That's kind of what we created here. And the science labs are going to deteriorate. The big piece, quite frankly, if you want to make this about anything, it's about try to make sure that we have state-of-the-art science labs for students in this school, because the school was framed around the idea that students were taking 4 full years of science and all of the kind of details of science and AP and all of those kinds of things, which obviously is happening in the portables. Don't get me wrong, it is happening from what Mr. Steele tells me, but the question is, will it continue to happen? And the athletic facilities that he asks me about on a regular basis. And I'm saying him, but I'm not, and I'm sure he's getting the same thing from parents about the athletic facilities as well. So I think those are 2 big pieces. And then you add on top of that, the notion of not, again, it's a really popular school. It's a school that's getting a lot of applications. And so I think that you add that on top of that as well. The idea is that the school could likely go up to about 400, 450 kids.
Dr. Adams, Pat, again, to your point just at the end of that, has the building been thoroughly gone through, not just with educators, yourself and Mr. Steele, but with engineers, architects? Have you checked for mold, asbestos, lead, et cetera, in the school, or would that be part of the renovation team?
The school is presently occupied, so we would not allow any kids in the building if there was any mold or asbestos issues at all. So yes, the answer to the question is yes, we have. And so again, when we do the renovations, something may come up that we might have to remediate something. As you know, when you start tearing down stuff and moving stuff, those kinds of things come available. We will be doing an update to the board tomorrow around our lead remediation. Tomorrow night when I'll be making these recommendations. So we have somebody on contract, and we have done, and I don't want to brag in any way, shape, or form, but I am positive that we've done a great job around lead remediation in the district with all of the things we've done around water and other things. So if anything comes available as it relates to lead, we will remove it. There is a likelihood that we will have to replace windows in this building, irrespective of y'all move or not. And that's likely going to take place, if not next year, the summer of the following year, because we know that there's some issues with old windows in this particular building. But that's not going to affect what happens with y'all moving in the building. That's likely a project that's going to be the following year. But yes, we have checked everything. We will not have kids in the building if we thought there were any kind of outstanding issues.
And the other part of my question was, my understanding from a student who has been there, and I've been through the building just twice in the last 4 or 5 years, an educator myself, and the bathrooms looked like they needed heavy renovation, if not total demolition and replacement. There were other parts of the school that looked like they could use more than just a little sweep up and paint. So my other question was, have you been through with an engineer or an architect? I understand it's occupied, but it's not a couple days a week.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you please.
No, go ahead. I'll wait.
I was also just, you've like all of us who live in these 100-year-old homes or apartments know, you do find things. And so it seems to me that the timeline then is stretched out. Even with the later start date in June, it seems like this is a blitz to a lot of us parents that I've spoken with and reading the comments online, that if we could make it for a year in our building, and somehow your 2 points to renovating the building in the year, which would prevent the deterioration of an empty building. And if there were a way, since CVPA is there, perhaps vandalism is less of an issue because you have people there right behind it. Are there any other issues that the parents should be aware of? And how likely do you think it is that the district could incur costs spread out over 14 months more easily than in 4 months, should there be surprises?
Excellent question, and I'll try to hit all three of them. Once we get into the building, because we are going to be looking at plumbing and gas to make sure that the labs are adequately sourced with those things. We are going to be looking at the bathrooms as well. We have a request for proposal. Contractors will be doing most of this work. So it won't be our staff doing it. There'll be contractors coming in. The ones who put the labs in will be moving the labs from where they were to here. At this point in time, when I talked to my team this morning, the only project we have from a district perspective outside of moving 7 schools, because we are going to be moving 7 schools and decommissioning buildings, is this project. We don't have 5 or 6 other projects. So this is the only project that the team will be working on. As you know, things come up all the time in these old buildings when you get into them. So I feel comfortable that we have the budget aligned to do what needs to be done in this building. You indicated this very well. It is impossible to compensate for everything that might happen. I am hopeful that once we get all of the RFPs back, that we will be able to start the work in June and complete the work by July. You mentioned that somebody will be in a building. Cleveland leaves the first week in June. So after June, there's nobody in the building, meaning when I say nobody, there'll be staff in the building until the end of June because principals are on call until that point in time. But after that point in time, there will be nobody on that side of the building. They'll be on the central side, but not on that side of the building. So the building will be unoccupied on that side of the building. And so that was one of my desires to try to get this started and moving and living, if you will, with people in the building as soon as possible. The finances, and I don't want to be, I think we have enough finances to do what we project to do. I don't think there are going to be any issues around the dollars being used for this part of the year and next part of the year. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So we will use some of this year's budget and some of next year's budget to do what needs to be done in the building to address it. So, and I hear that, and I had this conversation with I think somebody the other last week, as a matter of fact, about pushing this back and waiting 1 year. I just have some real concerns about waiting. I really do. I understand that it will make everybody feel a whole lot better, possibly. I just have some real concerns, and I had this conversation with Mr. Steele as well. He indicated to me some of his faculty is saying, let's just get it done. Some of his faculty is saying, can we wait a year? And so I think there's, there are options for both, quite frankly, Mr. Garrett, if I'm totally transparent with you. I just know how difficult it is to delay these projects and believe that these projects are going to move in the way that we want them to move with that amount of time. That's just my concern and fear, frankly, and honestly with you. I just have a real fear about that, doing this over a period of time and seeing buildings stay open for a period of time and the vandalism that takes place, and people come in and they steal fixtures off the wall, and it's just very difficult navigating, and we wind up spending more money than we did without the buildings being occupied. So that's my fear, quite frankly. And it may not be for the parents, because I get that, but I just know how difficult it is when we leave these buildings open for any amount of time.
I have one more question. Will the, because the pandemic is still rampant, it's not gone away, will online school still be an option in August?
That's a really good question. We are obviously following what the health department and the CDC says. We are opening a K-8 virtual school exclusively for K-8 virtual school. I am hopeful, quite frankly, Ms. Starlin, that we are back in person, at least to the degree that we can be, based upon what the health department tells us and the vaccines and all those kinds of things. So right now we are planning for in-person. We will pivot away from that as we get more information from the health department. But at this point in time, we are moving forward with fully in-person instruction unless we hear otherwise. Obviously, parents will always have the choice to look at the option around virtual or Admitum, which is the online program. It is highly unlikely, unless the CDC, unless something changes, that we will have the option that we have right now with some kids in this same building being virtual and some kids being in person. It is not likely that that's going to happen in the district right now. But again, as you know, there's another wave that might come that might impact us. And if it does, we will be like we are right now. If a wave comes, we will likely be the way we are now. But it's unknown right now because it's just premature to say right now. But we're planning for in-person 100% with a K-8 virtual school for those families who want to do virtual, and for online for those families who want to do online at the middle and high school level. That's what we're planning for right now. That might change depending upon what the health department and the data says relative to this pandemic.
Dr. Adams, you had a figure earlier about unfunded needs across the district. Was that $300 million?
Yes, sir.
And what is the annual budget of the St. Louis public school system?
$300 million.
Thanks.
That's general operating budget. The title dollars might bump it up to 330, but about $300 million.
Dr. Adams, we also have a student in the school and hopefully another one in 2 years. And we're a family who's going to be with Collegiate wherever you are. But I did want to speak, not necessarily a question, but just to give you a sense of 3 years ago when we were touring Collegiate with its, slightly older, I'll call it majestic feel with the green fields around of, semi-cut grass, going to a school for biology, felt pretty good. And when we walked inside, there were artist renderings of the expansion of the greenhouse, of the new gym, of the glass windows that faced the right direction for the plants, et cetera. And so I think for a lot of us, and you can keep this in your pocket as you decide how to approach the board tomorrow night. But I think for a lot, I'm not speaking for all, for sure, but for a lot of us, it not only feels very sudden, as you have indicated that it would, and you gave us your logic for waiting to kind of share this news. But I think for a lot of us, it feels not like a step forward for Collegiate. And I think the culture of forward and the culture of whether it's students, teachers, and parents, that this feels like a sideways, a lateral move for a lot of us to have to share a space as opposed to having our own. I can speak only for the parents and the couple of students that I know who are there who do identify with a building. And I know that you said it's not a building, it's a program. But I think you certainly understand that people get tied to a place, not just a program. They're tied to a people, not just a program. And the relationship that I think a lot of us parents and students have is, boy, this seems like a really sudden and sideways move. And I would just ask you to, consider that as you make the recommendation for either a 4-month turnaround with a month of building, and fingers crossed that there are no hidden things, and waiting 14 months for parents and students to roll up their sleeves and pitch in over the next year to really make their stamp, not just in the paint color, but also in the next move forward. And I think it might feel like more of a move forward if we had 14 months for parents to buy in and students to build a culture of here's what's next, as opposed to, uh-oh, what's happening. So that's just kind of again, from my personal experience, I'm not speaking for all of the parents here or who are at Collegiate, but just to give you a frame of kind of how it feels to a lot of us.
Well, I think your framing of this makes a lot of sense, and I do appreciate the context and the way that you framed it. I will apologize to this group and to the parents as well that we did not, at least I did not, inform you that what was going on a year ago or 2 years ago. I really kind of stayed away from Collegiate because it had an advisory board, and we were, I guess, kind of, although I'm on the board, I don't make all of the meetings, to kind of be careful about how much information to put out and how much information not to put out. Hindsight is 2020, and likely as I listen to you, we probably should have said something a year and a half ago or 2 years ago about what we were thinking about what might happen, and maybe this would not be quote unquote viewed as a shock, and we could have brought you along. Again, I just said, with everything going on around closing schools, I honestly did not think moving would be as much of a challenge as it is, because closing school is the end, and this is about moving on. But to your point, in light of what you thought you were going to get, and then getting this may not seem like you're moving in the right direction. To your point that you just kind of being offered something that's not necessarily what the expectations were when you signed up to go to this particular school, especially looking at all the renditions, because we've done 2 of them, quite frankly. I know that they had 2 sets of renditions that were done, one with it being, I think, a $20 million impact, and one with about a $10 million impact. So you are correct. You are 100% correct. And again, I apologize that we were not as transparent as we could have been about what we were thinking about through those renditions and saying, this is what we think will happen if funding was available and that funding came outside of the district as opposed to inside of the district. So that's, I take very seriously your requests. I'll leave it at that. I'll take very seriously your requests.
Hey, Dr. Adams, it's Misha again. So my concern is that although as a parent, I feel that it's necessary that we have the facility that Collegiate need. I also feel that maybe this is a better of the evil when it comes to the move. And if we aren't given or don't consider the move to Cleveland and we stay where we are, then it puts a cap on what's needed. It halts necessary things that Mr. Steele keeps asking for. And it seems like we would be stagnant in what we could do next. So if we don't get the move and then we're stagnant and everything is capped and we don't necessarily get other things that Collegiate needs, will that put Collegiate in the position, because we're capped at so many, they won't be able to progress to other things? Because as you grow, then the school can grow and gain other things. So how would that work?
Well, I think there's a concern. Don't get me wrong. I think, Mr. Garrett's comments and your comments, I think a similar comments. It's really about just trying to nuance the timing of all of this. When we were in school on, thank you. When we were in school on Saturday, one of the advisors talked about the idea of getting a hydroponics, correct me, Mr. Steele, program, if you will, one of its kind, that was coming from the Planet Science Center, that they were looking to donate that and put that in place. They would not be able to do that in the building that you're in now. There is no doubt about it. Would they be able to do it in this expanding building? Probably yes. We looked at a space that might could even go in. So again, that's a might. That's, the advisory board is a great advisory board. They're constantly beating up people to get resources for their school, and they're constantly coming up with programs and relationships that we could otherwise not get. But the building can accommodate that you're in right now, all of those things, all of these ideas that they have relative to enhancing the school and giving kids all of these options. So I think there's a real concern, Ms. Grimes, and I think Mr. Garrett's concerns are just as equal. Again, this is difficult for you, and it's difficult for me to kind of weigh both of these things and determine what's the best thing to do right now compared to 14 months or compared to 4 months. So that's why your opinions to me are important. That's why I try to read all of the comments that the kids sent to me. I do want to weigh them, and I want to try to be as fair and as possible in trying to get the resources that the school needs, but also accommodate the voices I hear from mainly the junior class, but all parents and kids relative to this. That's why this meeting was important to me. I want to weigh everything. I really do. And I didn't have this lens before because frankly and honestly, I did not think after the survey that this was an issue. I really honestly did not. If I did, I would have set up this meeting right after the survey and say, look, this is what's going on. This is what we're thinking about. This is why we're thinking about it. I would have done it right then and there. But again, I apologize because I misread the tone of where we were at this point in time. But your concerns and Mr. Garrett's concerns are both equal concerns relative to doing it now and what the risks are, and doing it later and what the risks are.
So this time tomorrow, should we know?
6:30 tomorrow is when the board meeting is. I'll obviously take into consideration everything that everybody has said. I'll put my cell number in the chat so that you can have it if you have any other feedback or thing you want to give to me. I answer my own phone between now and let's say 5 o'clock tomorrow. It's in the chat for you to get. The start time we plan on trying to keep the same, which is 8:15, because y'all have internships that y'all need to do. And I talked to my transportation people today, and we think we can make that happen. We don't think that's going to mess up anything at this point in time. It's not confirmed 100%, but after talking to them today, I feel comfortable that we'll be able to stay with the 8 o'clock start time. And yeah, my team is telling me, yes, it will stay the same. So we plan on keeping it the same. It means that Central may go to the same time as well, because it doesn't make sense to have two schools in the same building on different times, but Central may go to the same time as well. And I know Dr. Steele told me that Central will be very happy about coming at 8:15 as opposed to 7:10. So I'll say thank you very much. I'll put my number in the chat if you want to reach out to me tomorrow sometime. As I said before, if you call me or you text me, I'll definitely call you back if there's anything else you want to discuss prior to this. Again, I realize this is a difficult decision, and I'm gonna try to weigh it and see I'll go back and have a conversation with my team to see what happens if we delay this for 4 months. What does it mean? I really, honestly, Mr. Garrett, have not asked him that question, but I'll ask him that question. I'll ask him that question. What does it mean if we push this back, and how will it affect everything else? I have not asked that question, to be honest with you. Mr. Steele?
But Mr. Adams, I just want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you answering all of our concerns the best of your ability. We just look forward to what's going to happen next.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Steele. I'll let you close out.
Thanks, Dr. Adams.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Have a good evening. And again, I believe it's going to work out either way. So I am hopeful that it's going to work out. Not hopeful. I believe it's going to work out either way. Every single time we've done this, there have been concerns, and we've always come in with people walking in a building going like, wow, wow, wow. So, I know it's short term, but I could guarantee if you look at Wyman 7 years ago, you would go like, are you crazy? I'm not coming in this building. But it has turned out in every single case, even Central, when we did the renovations on the auditorium and stuff. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you for supporting St. Louis